Well, thanks so much for joining us. KSL Live at 5 starts now.
Coming up next on Live at 5.
A snowboarder shared a video of an intense confrontation he had with a Brighton property owner involving a gun. We asked an expert if that property owner was acting within his rights.
A mother and her daughter hit from behind and then left here on the side of the road. I'm sure Park live in Sandy with that story.
Coming up, a judge rules in favor of the public and transparency, ordering the release of A.G. Reyes' calendar. I'm Daniela Rivera. Why that victory could be short-lived.
KSL Live at 5 starts now.
This is title property. Do it again, there'll be holes. I'm not doing it again. I'm sorry.
All right, the question here, how far can you go to protect your private property?
That's the question many are asking after watching this tense moment caught on camera between a snowboarder and a Brighton property owner. In the video here, the owner shoves the rider while holding a shotgun and tells him that he's on private property.
News specialist Shelby Lofton joins us live to explain if he was legally allowed to respond this way. Shelby?
Mike and Ashley, we found out today that Utah law is not so black and white when it comes to the rights of private property owners. We found out that if an incident like this were to go to trial, the jury would have a lot of variables to consider, like the brandishing of a firearm, the physical contact we saw in that video, and also what was said in that video. An attorney I spoke to today called this case a tricky one. The snowboarder you see in this video is named Lauren Richardson. He told me that he left the Brighton ski resort gates to ski in the backcountry Saturday, and he said he thought he was taking a run that led straight onto a neighborhood road where his Airbnb was located. Richardson said he only saw trees and houses, no signs stating private property or keep out. He remembers the property owner pointing the gun at him. Utah defense attorney Steve Burton says you are allowed to defend your property using force if someone has come onto your turf with the intent to harm you or someone else. He says the video doesn't show the owner actually pointing the gun at Richardson, and that is an important distinction. Burton says it's not illegal to hold a gun in Utah, but it depends on if you're using it in a threatening or unreasonable way. The video shows this Brighton man pushing Richardson, and Burton says under Utah law, physical contact that can or does cause injury or pain is assault. Otherwise, it's no harm, no foul. And to be guilty of trespassing, Burton says you have to knowingly go onto someone else's property or bypass a sign or fencing that warns people to keep out. This attorney we talked to says it could be difficult to prove whether this property owner's actions were justified.
The law tries to reach a balance between protecting somebody's ownership rights, gun ownership rights, and protecting other people's right to feel safe and not be threatened by a firearm, by a deadly weapon. And so it is a tricky balance. I mean, in this situation, I think it's going to come down to whether or not that person was actually using a gun to threaten somebody else's life.
And Unified Police told us today that this incident is being investigated. And coming up on KSL-5 News at 6:30, we're going to take you to the area where this incident happened, show you what that snowboarder was seeing in that neighborhood and what some of the signs he might have missed were. For Live at 5, I'm Shelby Lofton.
Shelby, thank you. A Lehigh man behind bars accused of
Country.
A snowboarder who found himself on a Brighton man's driveway says he didn't see any signs that he was heading into private property, and he had no idea that he would come face to face with that man who was holding a gun. Coming up, we break down
A mother
how
and
far
daughter hit from behind and then
when units finish the safety review.
This is title property. Do it again, there'll be holes. I'm not doing it again. I'm sorry.
How far can you go to protect your private property? That's the question many people are asking after watching this tense moment caught on camera between a snowboarder and a Brighton property owner armed with a gun. News specialist Shelby Lofton joins us now. So Shelby, were you able to make it clear? Was the owner breaking the law?
This snowboarder told me he started his day up within the resort boundaries, and then he and his friends made it into the backcountry. They said they dropped into the neighborhood where their Airbnb was, but they didn't see any signs posted about being on private property. As you can see, the snow is so high in some spots, it's hard to make out what the sign said. And then suddenly the snowboarder found himself face to face with an upset property owner.
And he's standing there like out of a scary movie with his gun in hand, looking straight at us.
Snowboarder Lauren Richardson said he didn't see any warning signs before he found himself on this Brighton man's driveway. He says he's not the only one.
Someone's gonna die, and we need to stop that.
Defense attorney Steve Burton says property owners have the right to defend their turf within reason.
If the other person has done something that makes you believe that you need to defend your property, then you can use force. However, that's usually limited to non-lethal force.
He says the video doesn't show the owner pointing the gun at Richardson, but Richardson says he remembers seeing the shotgun pointed at him.
Utah's brandishing statute prevents somebody from using firearm in a threatening manner in some kind of argument or quarrel, but just possessing it is not illegal.
The video also shows the owner making physical contact with Richardson. Burton says it's not necessarily assault.
Was the push so hard that it was likely to cause injury to the other person? Or was it just a push and the other person didn't fall down, and so there's no harm, no foul?
When Richardson is walking away, we hear,
Do it again, there'll be holes.
That's called a conditional threat, and you can tell somebody, listen, if this happens again, then I might take action. But what you're doing is you're not threatening them at that moment with imminent force.
He says if the case were to go to a judge or jury, they'd have to decide if a reasonable person would have responded this way.
A lot of people might say, in that circumstance, if you just see a snowboarder or a skier coming down the mountain, it would not have been reasonable to point a firearm in that direction or to make those kinds of threats.
Richardson says he didn't know he was trespassing.
I was no threat. I was apologetic, hands in the air.
And we spoke to Unified Police today, and they said this incident is under investigation. We're still waiting to hear if charges will be pursued. Up in Big Cottonwood Canyon, Shelby Lofton, KSL-5 News.
Shelby, thank you. An important hearing was held today.